stream, and to a couple of those where folks are already on here. What's up? What's up?
Cool.
What's up? We are now live on all the platforms. What's up, people? It's Thursday, a couple days before the conference, and we got our last interview today. Today we have Mr. Roberto here with us. Going to be talking a little bit about teaching the truth, talking about the conference, talking about his work and his company's work, his family's work, and just getting, connecting across the distance. So first, let me just say welcome, my brother. You want to introduce yourself, say where you're based, and how you feeling today?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for having me on, man. It's a pleasure to connect with you, and thanks for inviting me and Lorena to participate in the conference. We're really looking forward to it. It'll be our first time as presenters at Dismantling White Supremacy Culture in Schools, and so we're honored, man. Doing well, man. Doing well by and large. I mean, I had mentioned to you, my family's a little sick. There's a stomach bug running through the house, so good thing we're not doing this in person, man. So everybody's getting touched up. But besides that, can't complain, man. Doing well. I'm here in Tampa, Florida. There's been a lot of rain lately, but it rains hard and then it dries up. And so get out there in the pool and stay fresh and try to enjoy the summertime and try to just relax, man. So much crazy things happening in our world that you gotta find those moments of joy, man. So all things considered, I'm doing well, keeping it positive.
Cool. So I got to give you some love for being in the 3-kid club. That club's more special than the 2-kid or the 1-kid club. It's just a little different.
The battlefield's real, bro. I already told my oldest twice before we got on. I'm like, listen, mommy's doing PD next door. I'm about to be on live shortly. You cannot come into the room. You got to stay in your bed. I know your stomach hurts. Chill. Go read. Go pray. You cannot come into these rooms.
We'll see how that play goes.
Right.
I already know. Cool, man. Well, let's make a shift to tell us a little bit about maybe what you used to do and what you do now.
Absolutely, yes. I was serving as a school leader for the past several years. Pre-K 3 through 12th grade. Most recently, I was a middle school principal in Austin, Texas. And I've had a great career in terms of in the classroom and in school leadership. But when we moved to Tampa, we pivoted, decided to invest full-time in our business, Multicultural Classroom, serving as educational consultants, working with a lot of schools across the nation and internationally in terms of implementing anti-bias, anti-racist strategies in terms of how the school's moving forward, but also in the classroom, looking at curriculum, certainly utilizing 2 books that Lorena has authored, the Anti-Racist Teacher Reading Instruction Workbook and Textured Teaching to support educators, really practical advice and application. And so I serve as executive director of Multicultural Classroom. Sometimes I'm in the forefront here speaking, presenting, doing PDs, but a lot of my work is behind the scenes, making sure we're in compliance, working with the CPA, working with the lawyers, building our network, making sure that we're handling everything that relates to compliance. And Lorena is the academic director, so she's on the front lines of it. But thankfully, sometimes we have opportunities to do certain things together. And your conference is one of those opportunities where we do get to present together.
Cool. Respect it. A lot of connections. I mean, I was a middle school principal, also started doing some consulting and doing, a little bit of all those same things too. So I can relate to, the beautiful struggle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me pause real quick, man. I gotta show the people this.
Oh, that's right.
Quick. You know what I'm saying? I gotta rep.
Sure, y'all. So the funny thing is, he's got the shirt even before I got the shirt because mine is coming in a couple of days. But
I got the plug.
Yeah, somehow you got the early shipment.
Now we appreciate that. We appreciate. Got the bags also, so we appreciate the merch.
Good.
Appreciate the merch. We love free gear. I got to get you a t-shirt, man.
Oh, for sure. So for folks who are watching, That's the shirt for the conference this year. The first 100 folks who registered are all getting those, or a bag, a tote bag in the mail, and other folks can check out the Etsy shop or my website later on when all that stuff's up. But I'm looking forward to seeing everybody rocking those shirts next week.
Listen,
No
and
doubt.
when y'all register, I want y'all to come through to our workshop, Designing Truth Telling Learning. It's going to be Wednesday, June 22nd, 12:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Pacific time, 4:30 Eastern. Come through. We're going to be working on that truth telling. We're going to give you some practical strategies. So when you come to the conference, I mean, try to go to as many workshops as possible. But obviously, I'm biased. I want y'all to come to our workshop. Appreciate that.
Oh man, I appreciate it. I was gonna plug you up. You plug it yourself, so that's good. That's even better. So let's build on that. So tell me, for folks who make it to that workshop, what are they going to be looking into exploring, or what questions might they be digging into, or what outcomes do you have for them? What's that space for?
Yeah, great question. Now, a lot of the work that we do is trying to take the theoretical stuff, trying to take a lot of conceptual learning and bring it down to the practical level, because teachers, they want to know, hey, what can I do at 8 a.m. on Monday morning? And so we want to focus on like how, right? We want to focus on how you can teach the subject matter, how you could design learning experiences, how you can relate to students, how you could move about in the school setting. And so the emphasis that we're placing is that this anti-racist teaching work that we do, it's hands-on, right? You got to get your hands dirty. You got to get involved. It's got to be integrated in the lesson design. And we want to offer concrete teaching steps. And so while many people talk about practices in the theoretical sense, and that's cool and that's fine, and that's definitely necessary, no doubt, we want to make sure that folks are not just staying stuck on like what we shouldn't do, but we want to discuss the alternative. So we're going to be exploring what to do, how to do it, and why. And we're going to talk about truth telling. And certainly, we know that if it weren't critically powerful, then they wouldn't be legislating against it. So there's a lot going on there, and we ain't budging for the truth, but we want to be strategic in the approach. And we want educators to feel like they're supported. So that's the aim.
Got you. So once you build on this truth telling piece, so why do we need to be doing more truth telling, and what are we not supposed to be doing if you want folks to focus on truth telling?
Yeah, absolutely. So why do we need to be focused on this? Well, historically, and I don't know what your schooling experience is like, but I could even think about my own schooling experience. And the stuff, there's a lot of truth that I learned outside of school. And it's left me wondering, like, why wasn't this being taught? Why wasn't I exposed to this? Why wasn't my culture represented? Why wasn't my history being told? Why is it? I come from Lawrence, Massachusetts, right? The city is largely populated with Dominican immigrants. And then there's several other groups, Puerto Ricans, there's Guatemalans, but largely Dominican immigrants. And so it's interesting to think of a school district that, I don't know what the percentage is, but let's say it's 80 plus. It's likely that 80+% of Dominican students, Dominican Americans, that there's no history being taught of those students. If their history is not their history equally important, aren't we considering the learners in front of us, right? Aren't we thinking about this in terms of, right? And without getting too deep, but like, let's do the spectrum. We should be thinking about this on the spectrum of culturally relevant, culturally responsive, culturally sustaining. And a lot of our work focuses on sustaining. Django Paris is a mentor of ours, and you'll find a lot of that content in textual teaching that we're talking about, unpacking how you could take culturally sustaining pedagogies and implement it in the classroom. And so we want to work on revealing truths that have historically been buried. Why? Because it's important to empower our students. It's important to expose them to that knowledge. It also is going to increase their hunger to learn. A lot of our young people are checked out because we're teaching about stuff that it just doesn't connect with them. They don't care about it. They're not being reflected. And I'm not even saying that everything that we're teaching is not important. But what I am saying is there's equally important content that has been and continues to be historically ignored. And so that's something that we have to wrestle with. In addition, with what's going on now through, media and politicians and certain groups of parents who are trying to flex and exercise their power so that certain truths would not be taught because it disrupts their comfort. In a lot of these cases, let me peel that back. In this particular case, we're talking about folks who are steeped in white supremacy. And not just white folks, also folks of color who are steeped in white supremacy. And so we got to work to disrupt that. And as your conference suggests, to dismantle that, right? Why? Because folks should be on an even playing ground. And if we're working towards equity, then we got to consider what are the systems that are out of whack, including systems within our schools that reinforce white supremacy.
No doubt. Love it. So talk to me about the last year. Okay. So in the last year, and we're going to hit on this on Monday and Tuesday in the conference around what made this last year so difficult in general, right? So you all are supporting schools around the country during this last year, and you're seeing that they're both interested in these topics, but also wrestling and battling a lot as they're going through this. What's your synopsis? What did you notice happening? when you try to describe to folks what happened last year that's very different than the year before? We were all activated and we were all turned up and in the streets and excited about all this stuff. But then we hit this year. What was this year like?
Yeah, this year's been up and down. I guess I had to frame it that way. It's definitely been a roller coaster from my perspective, working with a lot of different groups. Some of them. So I'm thinking about certain clients that we work with that they had more enthusiasm for the work maybe a year and a half ago, a couple of years ago. And now, when we connect and we're like, hey, give us an update. Where y'all at? Y'all still working on this? How can we support you? And notice that there's a lot of fatigue. There's discouragement. The discouragement could come from several sources. It could be because they feel like their leaders are not truly supporting the work. It could be because they feel like the school leaders or the school culture in general had a great opportunity to truly bring about education reform, and simply we went back to business as usual. Let's try to do school the way we've been doing school. So that was deflating for a lot of people. What else? There's been so much turnover, right? We know that there's been mass exit of educators, not just teachers, but also administrators and support roles. Just in general, the exit's been crazy. I mean, I'm thinking about recent conversations that we've had with individuals that we're connected to. One person told me 50% of their staff is not returning next year. Another person told me only 4. I forgot how many staff members they have, but it has to be a staff of at least 100, maybe 100 plus. Only 4 returning. When you think about that, you're saying like, wait a second, you got only 4 people returning to your school of 100 staff members. That's going to be a completely new staff, completely new school. You're going to have to establish new culture. Oh, right, because they're also going to have a new principal. They had a first-year principal. Now they're going to have a new principal after 1 year. So you think about these things that are so disruptive to culture that completely mess with your continuity and cohesiveness. And we know that our kids need predictability, right? Our kids need certain things to be consistent. And so for a number of folks, there's been a lot of discouragement. And even for individuals who have been allies and co-conspirators, that just seeing all the energy, how the energy was before when folks were in the streets after George Floyd and whatnot, and then seeing where things are at now, where, folks bought a bunch of books, but now the books are on the shelf, and, you worked on your whatever, all kinds of statements, right? Diversity statements and this statement and that statement. And then, they've done nothing with it. There's been no real concrete action. Obviously, this doesn't represent everybody in every organization, but we're saying, generally speaking, this is some of the stuff that we are seeing, some of the stuff that we are hearing. And so, we're trying to be mindful of how to best support folks when they're sharing this stuff, and mindful of the fact that, like, hey, we're in this consulting role. We're not currently in the classroom. We could relate to a number of things because it wasn't too long ago that we were in the classroom, but still want to respect the fact that, man, these people, they're still in it and they're feeling that weight. Yeah. And even for the folks that are most invested in this, for some of them at times, I could understand why they're like, you know what, man, I just need some room to breathe. Yeah. So I could appreciate the fact that this conference that you and your group have put together, Dismantling White Supremacy Culture in Schools, that the theme of the conference is prioritizing wellness and navigating resistance.
Yeah, 100.
That wellness and resistance, it's like, they have to almost work in conjunction with each other, right? Because the resistances can be draining, can be taxing. Mm-hmm. And so we got to consider the wellness, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes as school leaders, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes as a school leader, I was not considering the wellness of my people enough. Mm-hmm. I could front and tell you that I was, and I felt like I was all the time and whatnot, but nah, that's not true, man. Sometimes it's easy to get sucked in the vacuum of, like, yo, we just got to make it happen. We got to get this done. We got to serve these students. I'm hearing feedback from parents. I'm losing teachers. So in the midst of handling all those things, you know what it is, because you were a middle school principal. There's things that are happening that we're not always talking about, but we're feeling it as school leaders. Yeah. And then we got to make these decisions. And they're not always the right ones, if we're being honest with ourselves. So I appreciate this focus of prioritizing wellness and navigating resistance.
Yeah, no doubt. I hear you, and that's kind of why I selected those as themes. One, because we went through a year that felt so overwhelming, so exhausting, so sickening at times, but we're not the problem there, right? Like the sickness didn't originate in us, although we're feeling it, right? So part of the focus next week is trying to unpack what led to, whether that's historic or systemic pieces that led to this overwhelming exhaustion and overall, right, burnout and all that kind of stuff. And then this other piece, while we're battling the resistance and how the effect that has on us and what we do about it, right? So let me shift gears for you thinking about, given that the work is so hard, it continues to be hard, it's going to be hard, especially when we're fighting for justice. How do you recharge? How do you fill your cup? How do you feed your soul? And what are you doing these days, or what are you looking forward to doing over the summer to feed your soul? Whether that's music, whether that's a book, whether that's being outside. What is it for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's, at this stage in my life, it's a combination of things, because there's certain things, in particular playing basketball, that really fills my cup, but it's hurting my body.
What's about a time though? 15 years ago is different though, right?
Bro, 15, not even, man. Like, probably like 7 years ago, man, I was out there going hard and loving it. And things have changed, man. Like right now, I'm rehabbing my right shoulder, and this like rotator cuff shoulder impingement injury like came out of nowhere. Like I didn't do anything in particular to set it off, and I'm like, yo, what's happening? Like I can hardly lift this thing, and it's really that's drained me a little bit, man. Because I love my basketball community and connecting with the fellas that way. Sports present us with opportunities to connect across differences, and it definitely presents us with entry points to get into conversations that, sometimes we're not having like on the regular. And so I appreciate that. So less of that these days. We live in Florida. As I told you, we moved here last year. We got a pool. So I'm spending a lot of time in the pool, not just for my own physical wellness, but like with my kids. And I've really enjoyed that. I've been able to, once I shifted to being a full-time educational consultant, I've been able to be present for my kids, for my family in a way that I haven't in the past when I was school leader. First one in, last one out. I got to go to event this week, event next week, event the week after. And now it's like I have this newfound flexibility that I'm like, sometimes throughout the past year, I've been like, yo, this is wild, man. Like the grace of God is upon me to have this. I know it's a privilege. So I want to acknowledge that, now we're working, you know it because you're doing it. We're grinding. But at the same time, to have this opportunity in this season to not only work on my business, but have the flexibility to be from home, be present for my kids, get in the pool with them on the regular, help them learn how to swim, but also just have fun with them, be present with them. So that's part of what I'm doing. And as a person of faith, person who, follows the ways of Jesus, just trying to like stay in my prayers, stay in my meditation, stay grounded, because, there's a lot of things that not only I'm wrestling with, but things that are happening in the world that, sometimes discourage you. Right. And so just trying to maintain that sense of hope that there's something better and I got a greater purpose here and I have to live out my purpose. And, part of living out my purpose is taking my understanding, taking my gifts, my tools, and trying to utilize that to make a difference. Sometimes it's through speaking in conferences. Sometimes it's through professional development. Sometimes it's through being in the streets and serving the poor and the marginalized. But in all things, it's trying to see like, all right, how can the work that I'm doing really connect with my purpose and bring glory to God? So those are some of the ways it manifests in my life.
Appreciate it. So as you talk about purpose, talk to me about what you think 10 to 20 years from now could be for education, right? Not where do you fear it going? The question is, where do you hope it is in 10 to 20 years? And that's different in 1 year or 5 years, right? Let's dream big, right? Let's get Afro-futuristic on this, okay? Like to say, like, what's really could be 20 years, right, of this kind of work grinding, when our kids are educators, right. What they're gonna be doing.
That's I don't know if that's a scary thought or what. Like you just said, when our kids are educators, I'm like, oh snap, right. In 20 years, my oldest is gonna be 27. And I'm like, what? Like, what am I gonna do? What can I say, man? I'm hopeful that what we're doing is laying down a firm foundation for present and future educators, because there's a lot of folks that came into the field of education and they didn't have any of these resources. They didn't have the support. They didn't have a conference such as yours. They didn't have individuals such as us speaking on social media, giving them gems. They didn't have sufficient consultants, and definitely not BIPOC consultants on the, we talked about the need that, we're filling a void there. And so I'm hopeful that 10 to 20 years from now, there's a firm foundation that's been set for this work that would demonstrate consistency across our schools in terms of common language, consistency in terms of approach, that would inspire innovation, that would inspire global connections, that we're not just looking at individuals who are not like us as the other, right? We could think about that in terms of just here in the United States, and we could think about that more broadly, how it is that oftentimes we could find ourselves looking at individuals who are not like us as the other. But in this day and age of technology and all the opportunities that we have to be connected across the globe, man, I would love to see a hunger that is incorporated into what we do in schools, pushing and inspiring school leaders, educators, our youth, and the community in general, right? Including parents, to truly live out what it means to be a global citizen. You hear a lot of schools talk about that, to put in the mission statements, so on and so forth, but are they truly doing that? And so love to just see more exposure, right? This is why we're doing the work that we're doing. And this is why Lorena and I are doing this workshop, designing truth-telling, learning at the Dismantling White Supremacy Culture, Wednesday, June 22nd, from 12:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Pacific time, 4:30 Eastern. This is why we're doing this, to challenge and encourage folks to go beyond their comfort zone, to consider whatever we deem as the other, and hopefully push them more towards appreciation and as opposed to resistance, and even as opposed to curiosity, right? Because sometimes we look at, again, the other, and it's just looking at them in a curious manner, as opposed to being curious about connecting with the human beings, being curious about connecting with the culture that may not necessarily be our culture. Like, it's okay. It's okay for us to feel uncomfortable. It's okay for us to learn some different things, learn from other people. It's okay for that to be disrupted. And so that's my hope, to see 10, 20 years, there's a firm foundation set for teachers getting into the field, for students, for the community at large, that there's common language, that there's understanding, that there's an embrace to want to learn about our differences, and that we're pushing ourselves to truly be global citizens.
Dope. So let's let the folks know, where can they find out what's going on with the Multicultural Classroom, what's coming up next, what's on the horizon, how can they get in touch with you?
Yes, absolutely. Let's see. So if you want to get in touch with us, it's Multicultural Classroom across all platforms: IG, LinkedIn, Facebook. On Twitter, you can follow our individual pages at R Herman 2012, at Nena Herman, that's Lorena Herman. But definitely go to our website, multiculturalclassroom.com. There you're going to find some free resources. You can follow the podcast, Our Classroom, where we talk about education, not just within the four walls of the schoolhouse, but understanding that education is happening whenever and wherever we're willing to learn. And also resources, the Anti-Racist Teacher, Reading Instruction Workbook, you can cop that there. Texture Teaching, we'll have a link on our website that'll lead you to the Heinemann Publishing page where you can order that book. And in terms of what we have coming up, well, we got your conference coming up. Excited about that. Dismantling White Supremacy Culture in Schools. We also have a number of other organizations that they're escaping my mind right now, in which we're leading some PD or leading keynotes. And then we have a really exciting opportunity in June of 2023. So for those of you who are into traveling, we partner with a education travel program called Teach with Love Global, led by Taina Benitez, and Lorena and I, along with a couple other leaders. We are going to be leading a trip to Egypt in June of 2023. We still have some spots available. So for those of you who enjoy traveling, you want to go to the African continent, do something different, do something new, be around an extraordinary group of educators. And I'm not just saying that because Lorena and I are going to be there, but I think we will enhance the trip. But Diana and the rest of the team are just amazing. And so this will be our first time doing an opportunity like this through this organization. We've done some travel separately, but working with this organization who've provided a lot of support to Multicultural Classroom, this is an exciting thing for us. So that's what we got coming up.
Oh, beautiful things. And I'll co-sign the trip to Africa and the trip specifically to Egypt. Nothing like that. Nothing. All right,
we're going to be also, we're involved with a summit that's going to take place while we're in Egypt. So this is, you know, we're going to be putting it in and partnering with educators out there. We're not just showing up as the Americans to flex. We're like, yo, you know, we know what's going on now. We're going to be partnering with the folks on the ground over there in Egypt, learning from them learning from us. So excited to be presented at that summit over there in Egypt in June 2023.
Dope. All right. So last question as we wrap up. Warriors in 6 or Warriors in 7?
Oh, man. Yo, I was wondering if we were going to go there when you mentioned that you were in the Bay Area all these years before you moved, man.
6 or 7? Is it Warriors in 6 or Warriors in 7?
Listen, bro, stop playing. This interview was going real well until, you know, you had to bring it there.
You got 2 options. You only got 2 options here. 6
Listen, Celtics in 7. Let's go.
All right, good.
You know I'm originally from Massachusetts, man. I'm from north of Boston. So, like, listen, I got a lot of respect for the Warriors. If they were playing any other team, I'd be rooting for them. But I got to go with the home team, and we're going to 7. And if we lose to y'all, tip my hat and give y'all the ultimate respect.
That's good. I'm gonna tag you in some smack talk all night. How about that? I got you.
You and Django Paris, man. You and Django Paris.
Cool. All right, sounds good. Sounds like we can celebrate next week one way or the other.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Let me say one thing but before we wrap up, because I was thinking about what we were talking about earlier in terms of wellness and navigating resistance. And I told this to brother Kwame Safro-Mensah, who was recently on my podcast. Mm-hmm. When we do things like this fills my cup. Yeah. You know, for me, this is a form of resistance. For me, this is a sense of wellness for me. You know, like, is this the technical definition of wellness? Not necessarily, but like, this is a form of wellness for me, being able to connect with brothers who are like-minded, brothers who are putting in work, sacrificing themselves, because we know in the work that we do, in the content that we're talking about, you know, people want to come for our necks. And so I respect your grind. I respect what you and your team have done with this conference that is in its 3rd year. And, you know that you have a supporter in me, and I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, man. And likewise, I agree. It's healing, because it reminds us that we're not alone, that we're not crazy, right? And that, you know, there's some solidarity in this struggle, and that, you know, we're going to win, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, much respect for their interview, for the work, for being a part of the conference, and, you know, the work that y'all going to keep doing. Much appreciated.
Salute, brother. Thank you.